Hello everybody and welcome to the July edition of Let's Talk. Last month wasn't a super busy month. I didn't have a lot to go over, and honestly, I don't have a lot to go over this month either. I know that sounds kind of crazy given how big June typically is and was this year in terms of like video game releases and announcements and things like that, but I'll touch upon that in a minute briefly about why I don't want to really go over that stuff, but we're going to mostly just focus on talking about channel related things again this month, and I'll tell you why. So, obviously, we just had E3, or Key 3, as people like to call it, Summer Games Fest and things like that. And, you know, with it came the Xbox Games Showcase, and then the PlayStation State of Play, and there was later on a Nintendo Direct, although it was third-party only, and, you know, all this stuff. And there was a lot of really interesting, cool stuff that was unveiled at pretty much every single one of these presentations. And while in previous years I would love to sit down and talk about all of this stuff and, you know, go over the things that I'm the most excited for, it kind of goes against the spirit of this channel at this point, honestly. So, in case it wasn't obvious from the way that I structure my content, I don't give a crap on this channel about what is relevant or recent anymore. For me, this channel is a vector for me to play and talk about games that I either have an interest in or already love from any system. Even if I don't have interest in it, it does not matter what year the game released. I mean, just look at what we've been doing so far with Let's Have a Look at Games I Remember, things like that. It's all, you know, all over the place. It could be stuff that just came out on Xbox One, PS4, 5, Series X. It could also be stuff on the GameCube and soon to be the Nintendo 64 once I get that recording setup figured out. It doesn't really matter the generation. I am not here to basically latch on to the publicity of whatever is the latest game release like so many other gaming channels do. That's not the point here. In fact, over the years, especially as I've gotten older, I have grown to detest that mentality. Not what the YouTube channels are doing. I don't have a problem with that. It's more the fact that a lot of people treat video games like there's nothing else to play except for what's coming out here in the future. There's a lot of people treat video games like that. The only thing they can be excited for is what's coming out next. What's next? What does the game industry have for us? What are they going to talk about in a Nintendo Direct? I hate that mentality. Absolutely despise it, because there are millions of video games out there, guys. Millions. And you know, even if you discount like all of the really old games that you would never have an interest in playing if you can't get into games like that, there's still tens, hundreds of thousands that have come out since the 2000s. There are so many video games that if you were to stop playing new video games right now and just go back and play old stuff for the rest of time, you would probably never finish all of it. And I really think that is underappreciated. I wouldn't really qualify myself as like a retro game channel. Not at all. I mean, I don't have a lot of vested interest or a lot of, I guess, experience with, you know, stuff from the NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis era. I was born after that. Nintendo 64 is kind of, and the PS1 is about as old as my generation goes. And while you could still qualify that as retro, that's not where the focus of this channel is either. It's more in the late 2000s, early 2010s era, I would say, in terms of the stuff that I've actually covered on here. But I also hate to say that that's definitive or anything, because it's not. It's not true at all. In fact, there are going to be here soon, pretty much every series on the channel is going to be a game that came out within the last 5 years. And that's not to say they're all brand new releases, but they're all relatively new. And basically there are no boundaries. But that's because I am not a type of person who gets excited for anything that isn't either a sequel to a game I already love or a remaster for a game that I haven't played in a long time that actually deserves a remaster. Like the Shadow of the Colossus remaster, super excited over the Spyro Reignited trilogy. I was so on board for that because I just couldn't stomach going back to the PlayStation 1 versions of that. But you look at something like, I don't know, this Last of Us remake that we're getting right now, and I don't think I'm so excited for that, because it's like, why? I can just go back and play the remaster on PS4 that runs at 60 frames per second, so. But essentially, those are the only types of games that I am actually willing to be like, yes, this is going to be good. I'm able to convince myself in my mind that it's going to be a good game, because with everything else, it's a total wild card. Even with remasters, it can be a wild card at times because you never know the quality of the port or anything like that. But new games, I never, ever bank on the success of those games anymore. I just don't. I am of the mindset that every single new game that is coming out has the exact same potential to be good or bad, and until it is out and it is good, I do not care. I do not care. Like, do I want Starfield specifically, you know, Fallout in space, which is totally up my alley? Do I want that to be good? Absolutely. Do I think it's going to be any better than something like Gloomhaven? I don't know. I have no clue. I have absolutely no clue, and I'm not willing to act like I have any clue because nothing that we're shown in any of these presentations tells us whether any of that's going to be good. So I feel like it's dishonest, disingenuous, and actually quite manipulative to sit down and talk about all of this stuff and what I'm excited for at this point, because I've been burned one too many times. I've been following the game industry so closely for so many years that at this point I have no trust in any of them. No trust. Especially in these curated presentations. At least with E3, we could see the stumbling and the awkwardness from the presenters, and we could see when they could clearly, you know, they clearly had nothing to show for their games. Like, remember the Anthem presentation back at E3? That was such a good example of, even in this curated, hand-picked environment, they still couldn't give people a reason to be excited for that game. And lo and behold, look, it turned out to be a train wreck. And that happens a lot at E3, but in these presentations, there is no vetting that. There is no knowing whether or not something is going to be good or bad. They can 100% curate something, and I think with E3, we at least got to see a little bit of that awkwardness, and also got to point and laugh at it, which I think was half the fun with E3, was we got to meme on it a little bit, and I do kind of miss that. I would rather have that back, and when I see all these showcases and presentations, I'm like, oh, cool, a bunch of trailers, a bunch of things that are being marketed to me, and frankly, when it comes to commercials and trailers, I am no more or less swayed by something than before I even saw it, until, again, that product is out, it actually has good reviews, it actually has good word of mouth, and at that point, I'm willing to give it a chance and pay for it. So that's why I will not be covering E3 or anything like that at any point in the future from now on. I just don't find it a good use of my time. All right, let's get into channel stuff now, because I feel like I covered all of that pretty well. So I said last month that I was going to kind of scale back on the Let's Have a Look At series, and that's kind of still true, but not exactly. I'm kind of walk that back a little bit, because I'm starting to realize that a lot of people are really into that. A lot of people like these first impressions videos, just checking out random games, and I actually want to do more of that, but in a different sense. I'm going to try to switch things up a little bit. I would like to have less 2-episode Let's Have a Look At, you know, where it basically takes up the whole week, as opposed to having 2 games in a week. I would like to have longer episodes, like let's say 30-40 minute episode first impressions, where we look at the game and then that's it. That's the whole video, or the whole game is contained in that one episode. Kind of like what we got with Killzone, although hopefully with less negative connotations than that video had. But that's what I'm going to try to do from now on a bit more. That's not to say I'm going to promise that stuff every single week. I still would like to scale back the schedule a little bit, and part of that is going to come with a couple of series winding down over time. So Kena Bridge of Spirits is the next to end, and that is ending in about 2 weeks from when this video goes live, and that is going to be replaced by Pokemon. Still haven't said what Pokemon it's going to be, but it's going to be Pokemon. Very long Pokemon series, by the way, coming out. Not to say most Pokemon games aren't, but it is probably going to be closer to the 60-70 episode range as opposed to the 30-40 episode range like a Mystery Dungeon would warrant. So just keep that in mind. Kirby is going to be the next one to end, maybe. I don't want to actually say that definitively anymore because of Fallout 4, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But Kirby is probably going to be the next one to end, and that follow-up is, I'm just going to say it straight up, is going to be Subnautica Below Zero. And it's going to be a little bit different than the Subnautica Let's Play because I am much less experienced with the sequel. It's going to be much more of a let's go over all of the pros and cons of this game that I don't think quite nailed what Subnautica did completely down, but is also still a good game in its own right, and it's gonna be more of a showcase than anything, but a full playthrough nonetheless. We are going to go through the entire thing. I think when I started recording it, I wasn't sure if I was going to finish it, but I did end up finishing it because it's really not that long of a game. So that's going to be replacing that or Fallout 4, but I'm thinking it's going to replace Kirby because I think once Fallout 4 ends, I'm just going to let that time slot just stop for a while, just kind of chill and sit on the back burner. Fallout 4, let's discuss that series. So at the moment, and I don't even know if that series is going to continue past a certain point, I would like to save it, but it's probably going to run into a big hiccup because the laptop that I am currently recording that on is, I'm currently dealing with a hard drive failure on that system. So while, yes, I obviously could get back to recording it as soon as I can get the laptop working again, I don't know how long that's going to take me to get it working again, because it's kind of, I got to replace it with a hard drive, and I'd like to replace it with a solid state drive, and obviously those aren't super cheap, and it's just, it might not also just be the hard drive, it might be something else that's a problem, but who knows. So if I can't currently finish the entire series on this laptop's last legs, that series might go on a break for a little bit. On top of that, I decided to shift the focus of the series a little bit because I realized the way I was doing things, and this is kind of a feeling out period, by the way, this particular playthrough, because I want to do, I've said this before, I want to do multiple Fallout 4 mini playthroughs where we take a look at each of the factions. The ones that I've been meaning to cover are Brotherhood of Steel, which is what we're doing right now, the Institute, a Soul Survivor playthrough where I very much focus on actually vault-related perks and kind of like a main character playthrough that's an aside. I'm treating the Let's Play that I did as the Railroad playthrough because that's essentially who I went with in that Let's Play. And then I would also like to do a Minutemen playthrough and maybe a Raider one too, so we can see the other side of Nuka World, but that's about it. The whole point of these series is essentially to give me an excuse to look at different side quests and quests that have alternate outcomes and to see both sides of them from different perspectives across across multiple different characters. So with Brotherhood of Steel, and the episode isn't out yet, but we're going to be going to Concord, which was not Concord, excuse me, Covenant is what I meant. And Covenant has two sides, two outcomes to that quest. And in the Let's Play, I did one outcome, but in the Brotherhood of Steel, it's going to be an opposite outcome because different ideals, different alignments, things like that. So I wouldn't cover Covenant again in the Minutemen playthrough, for instance, or the Institute playthrough, because it just wouldn't make sense. We don't need to go back to that. I just want to give each quest a shot to see their alternate paths, if that makes sense. And then of course the different endings for the main quest that aligns to each of the different factions. And the Brotherhood of Steel one it's mostly good, but I think I did a little bit too much dawdling around, a little bit too much goofing. The main reason I did that, had these episodes where we were just exploring, kind of doing the normal shtick, was mainly just to level up, just to, so my character could actually skill up. But I realized that if I just kind of cut that stuff out, we just kind of focus on story and quest progression, it actually still works pretty smoothly. So I've sped up the Fallout 4 Brotherhood of Steel playthrough to the point where it should end in less than 40 episodes. And when my original plan was in the 50s and 60s, and then I realized that's too long. That's too long if I'm going to do multiple playthroughs of this stuff. So while the Brotherhood of Steel one might take almost 40 episodes, the other ones I'm hoping to keep under 30 episodes, possibly even around 20 episodes if I can. And a reminder, these are also much shorter episodes than what I did in the Let's Play. The Let's Play, they were 30 to 45 minutes to an hour each. And in this playthrough, it's 15 to 20 minutes. So Fallout 4 is changing a little bit, but like I said, it might also go on hiatus for a little while because I've got some issues with the PC I'm recording that on. Now, I should also say I'm not going to be doing these Fallout 4 playthroughs back-to-back. I talked about my schedule, my upcoming schedule, a couple of Let's Talks ago about all of the things that I have on the list. And the Fallout 4 playthroughs are kind of interspersed between games. So after this Brotherhood of Steel playthrough finishes, you might not see the Minutemen or the Institute one for a year, for instance. We're just going to kind of splice it in between, and especially given at the rate that Bethesda releases new games, I don't think this is going to be a huge issue to try to get all of this done before Fallout 5 comes out. But that is the goal, and I like I said, I don't want to overwhelm you guys or oversaturate the channel with Fallout 4 content. That was never my plan. I just wanted to add to what I think was a bit of a flawed and incomplete Let's Play. That was still a good Let's Play, but it was definitely flawed, incomplete, and especially in the through the whole course of the main story, I barely knew what I was doing because I was so new to the series at the time. Reminder that Let's Play began on the day that Fallout 4 came out. So long freaking time ago, and that was my first ever Fallout game that I actually played all the way through. So it needed a little bit of adjustments and a little bit of add-ons to fully realize itself, I suppose, to feel like I've actually covered the game in full. And speaking of more or less incomplete series, this year, or the rest of this year, excuse me, is going to be a little bit interesting. So like I said, I'm going to keep Let's Have a Look At going, and Games I Remember and all that stuff. That stuff's still going to be around, and I never said it was going to officially go away, but it's going to be pretty prevalent still. But aside from that, excuse me, the other series that we've got going on, Forza Horizon 3, Horizon Forbidden West, and then the Pokemon game coming out, those are pretty much all going to take the rest of the year in their respective time slots. They're all such very long games, and with Forza Horizon 3, we're only just getting into like the DLC. We're almost done with the main campaign area, the vanilla game, but we still have to get into the DLCs, which are going to take a while to get through. So we've got so much of that game. Horizon Forbidden West isn't even close to like a quarter of the way done. And Pokemon, like I said, is going to be a really long series, probably going to go well into next year. So because of that, you know, for everything else that's going to be taking up time slots, I want to spend some time this year and also part of next year working on finishing more or less other series that I have kind of left unfinished, if that makes sense. So, well, I mean that in two ways. So, one, I am going to be starting back up with Ghost of Tsushima here relatively soon, not like immediately or anything, but probably before the end of the year. And we're going to be finally jumping into the Iki Island DLC, so we can take a look at that, the expansion that came with the director's cut. And we'll be jumping into that. I'm going to be doing that completely blind. I have not touched that at all, because after playing through the entire game and Let's Playing the entire game, I kind of needed a break from it for a while, so I just haven't touched it since that Let's Play ended. But we're going to be jumping into that DLC here somewhat soon. But then I'm also talking about completing series in terms of game series that I haven't finished yet. So on this channel, I have covered Tomb Raider, the reboot, the 2013 reboot, as well as Rise of the Tomb Raider. But I have not covered Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I have covered BioShock 1 and 2, but I have not covered BioShock Infinite. And I have also covered Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor, but I have not covered Middle-earth Shadow of War. All three of those games are games that I would like to get started on within the next 12 months. The first of those is probably going to be Shadow of the Tomb Raider, because that series has been sitting dormant for a long time, although BioShock is also very comparable in that regard, and Infinite is a much older game, so probably going to get around to that one soon. Shadow of War might not make the 12-month start period, especially because that is a long game, but I do want to cover it at some point. I'm not going to be covering any of these games in a Let's Play format. They are going to be kind of their own thing, because personally, all three of those games I do find to be inferior to the games that I have already covered on the channel. I like BioShock 1 and 2 more than Infinite. I like the original Tomb Raider reboot and Rise more than Shadow, and I do like Shadow of Mordor more than Shadow of War. And there's very good reasons for that, but I still want to cover those games for the sake of completion, and I also, and I say this with a little bit of hesitance, but I think I can actually do it this time. I also want to jump back into the Dishonored series. So way back in the day, I want to say it was around 2014 or 15, I covered Dishonored. I started to Let's Play Dishonored, and I made it about 70% of the way through the game, and I dropped off of it, and I never finished the Let's Play. And it sat dormant for a while, and then I ended up just deleting all the videos. I either deleted them or unlisted them, I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I actually deleted that series. And one of the first Let's Plays that I didn't actually finish, and there's probably about half a dozen now that have hit that point. But Dishonored is one I've actually been meaning to go back and look at some point. And that's one that I also want to try to cover here in the near future, especially because it's not a very long game. I mean, it kind of can be, but even at its like most in-depth, even if you go and do absolutely everything, it's still like not even a 10-hour game. So I think that one would be pretty harmless to cover. Plus, I actually do think Dishonored 2 is even better. So would like to check that one out at some point. Maybe Death of an Outsider, I don't know. But that is something I want to come back to pretty soon. So focusing on completing certain series that have been left on the back burner, jumping back into, you know, stuff, just basically checking off some boxes and tying a bow on some of the series that I have worked on all over the last 11 years of this channel. I would like to get into that here in the near future before we move on to some other new stuff. That's not to say I don't have other new stuff planned, because I absolutely do. Problem is a lot of that new stuff has to wait for Horizon and, well, both Horizon games, Forbidden West and Forza Horizon 3, kind of needs to wait for those two to finish. And they are very, very long games, so they're going to be waiting a while, and I just want to kind of fill the time with some stuff that is a little less pressing, or I guess a little less important is what I meant. But still would, be a nice way of actually completing all the series and saying that I'm done with those franchises finally, after they've been kind of like an albatross around my neck for so many years. And the last thing that I want to talk about is something that I'm going to be mainly focusing on through the entire month of August, once that actually gets started, at least in terms of on my end, but you guys will hopefully see the fruits of that labor in September, maybe October, but hopefully even sooner than that. And that is jumping back into Destiny. I've said this many times, I want to jump back into Destiny. I want to give the rundown on that game, try to make some videos that talk about how you can get into a game like that, because I don't feel like enough people make those sorts of videos. There are some that do, but I would like to kind of offer my personal take from a semi-casual perspective, or at least in terms of my skill with the game, and just be like, hey, this is how you get started, this is why you'd want to play this game, this is why I think it's so freaking good, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to actually go over a bit of in-depth stuff about the game, and do it in a way that isn't really conducive to the Let's Play format, because that game itself isn't really conducive to the Let's Play format. It'll be kind of its own thing, and that is my plan to work on for most of the month of August. I'm trying to time it right around when the game starts to head into a new season, because that's usually the best time to sit people down and explain, okay, this is what you can expect from the game and why it's worth your money and time. So that's coming soon. That'll be around the corner here somewhat soon. But this month in particular is going to be focused on wrapping up Kena, moving into and transitioning into Pokemon, and then seeing Kirby and Fallout and Horizon Forbidden West and Forza Horizon 3, seeing all those games through, while we also take a look at a few random, fun, interesting, and unique games here and there, interspersed in between all of that. Oh my goodness, it's so much, but it's I'm having a blast. And I know to some people that this can be a little bit overwhelming at times, but I never expect anybody to watch every series. Just come around whenever you want to watch a video. I only upload every series 2 times a week, so if you're only invested in one game, you don't have to spend a lot of time watching videos. It's not about trying to give people 1,000 different things to watch. It's about giving 1,000 different people 2 things to watch, if that makes sense. That is the whole idea of this schedule, and it also keeps me going, because I do like to have variety, and I do find myself getting a little bit bored of not the games, but particularly series when they drag on for months and months and months at a time. So it's nice to have that variety there. Anyways, guys, that is going to be it for this month's Let's Talk. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it very much, and I will see you all in the next one.